Before we go, I want to acknowledge the passing of a familiar face to viewers of this program, the great Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. Congresswoman Lee was born and raised in Queens, New York as the granddaughter of Jamaican immigrants before embarking on a career in politics, representing the people of inner city Houston, Texas in Congress for nearly 30 years. Throughout that time, she fought hard on issues of civil rights, human rights, criminal justice reform. She was the lead sponsor of the bill that made Juneteenth a federal holiday and introduced the bill that reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. In a statement, President Biden described Congresswoman Lee as a fearless and unrelenting leader, and I could not agree more. She was a true friend and an ally in the struggle. To say she will be missed is an understatement. I will never forget, just a few days ago, her son called me and said, "Mom can't speak, but I want to put the cell phone to her ear so you can say a prayer for her." And I did, not knowing that I was saying goodbye to a gallant fighter and a friend, whether it was fighting for reparations or standing with us with the George Floyd family for Lonas lives in her district in Keter. She was always there. To say she'll be missed is like saying you'll miss something that you always knew would be there. But let's thank God for the time that she was with us and that she used her time to improve us all. This is a better nation and a better country, and we are better people because of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you for sharing that. And welcome all to our July Reparations Strategy Session. We are excited to be here in community with everyone. Since we last met, and very recently, we lost our champion, our leader, our national leader for reparations. And so we're going to make a couple changes to our regular schedule so that we can honor and remember and celebrate the life of the Congresswoman. I am trying to get into celebration mode because we have so much to celebrate and build on of her great work. And so instead of having our regular regional updates and our partner updates, if our regional leaders have anything to put in the chat, please do that. And if our partners have any updates to share, please put those updates in the chat. We want to set aside this time to honor the Congresswoman before we have our presentation today, which is by Dr. Amilcar Shabazz, who, if he's not in the chat or in the room, he'll be here in time for his presentation. And so we have a couple special guests that have joined us to give remarks that worked very closely with the Congresswoman. And then we want to allow time for others to unmute themselves so that others can share how she's impacted you, the movement, even if it's just a special moment that you want to share. I see Sister Attorney Queen Nikichi is here, and I know that we didn't have you confirmed, but if you could be prepared certainly to unmute yourself and share remarks, and then we have others that have already committed their time to share. And so I'll start. Everyone knows my story. I really officially joined the reparations movement only in 2019. Didn't think about local reparations until I was serving as a city councilwoman, and that led me to this work today and gave me the great privilege of working in tandem. And that was the Congresswoman's words, that we worked in tandem on reparation. There was never no little reparations or big reparations, no sort of competition between local, state, and federal. It was always that we're working in tandem for one goal. The Congresswoman showed up for us as local leaders. If we called her to Evanston, if we called her to another small or big city, to a big gala or a small meeting, the Congresswoman showed up. She was one of our very first presenters on this exact reparation strategy sessions that we've been doing for a few years now. She was one of the first to show up to present. She's been to Evanston multiple times, not only for our annual symposium, which many of you met her there, but she also came to Reparations Town Hall led by Beth Emmett Synagogue here in Evanston under the leadership of Rabbi London. Also her colleague and my friend Congresswoman Jan Jakowski came with her there. I learned so much from her. I could spend the whole hour talking about what I learned about leadership, excellence, audacity, intellect, and fun. And so I want to end my remarks and save time for everybody else on a fun note. My last time I had in person with a congresswoman, we were on a panel together working in tandem, again, her words, that's when she started using that language. And after the panel, we actually went dancing. And so we went dancing, me and the congresswoman went dancing. And I'm like, are me and the congresswoman dancing right now? And it was very short. It was about 20 minutes total, but I just remember that moment. And I always make time for balance. And if the work is getting too heavy, and I remember that even Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee took a moment to just dance. And we were in the thick of it, in the middle of the crowd. And everyone was like, is that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee? And it was like, yeah, that's Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I don't know why we're doing this, but I love it. So I just wanted to share that she showed up for each of you. She showed up for the movement, and she never did it begrudgingly. Every time with the same level of enthusiasm and passion and rigor and so on. And so I just hope that I and each of us can continue building on her work and leading by her example. And so I'm going to pause and ask that we have Mr. Keenan Keller has joined us. He was a incredible long-term colleague of the Congresswoman. You'll have to read his bio online somewhere. It's too long to list. But from my understanding, the official title is Senior Counsel to Judiciary Committee. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And thank you, Keenan, for being here, and our condolences to you.
Thank you very much. With a heavy heart, I think we meet to celebrate the memory of Representative Jackson Lee. She was a true force of nature. I started working with her in Congress when I came in 1999 with Congressman Conyers on the Judiciary Committee. She worked very closely with Mr. Conyers for years around a whole series of civil rights, civil liberties, criminal justice reform issues. And when he left Congress, she took on the mantle of those issues, very much so around the issue of reparations and promoting the passage of H.R. 40, which would establish a federal reparations commission. I remember very vividly when we attended the 2001 UN Conference Against Racism, when they got off the plane, Mr. Conyers and Ms. Jackson Lee wanted to go to an international reparations convening that was taking place in downtown Durban, South Africa. And they were both incredibly engaged in these issues. And we kind of felt that it was a great conversation because it allowed us to, put, an, international face on what we've been doing, domestically. When she took over the stewardship of H.R. 40 after Mr. Conyers left Congress, she just absolutely, energized the process and built on, what we've been doing. We had a hearing, we had a markup of the legislation. We ended up with 200 co-sponsors, and through her energy and through her gravitas, was able to push H.R. 40 to the brink of the House floor. And in the past year, was able to engage with President Biden about the possibility of having H.R. 40, enacted through an executive order where the president would establish the commission. She really enjoyed, engaging with folks at the state and local level around the issues as they presented themselves. She loved going out to Illinois. And Alderwoman, you recall that you attended several CBC ALCs where you were able to bring reports to us about what it was that you were accomplishing. We always felt that it was of critical importance that the states and the cities, the localities, took a lead on the issue, because you were able to do things that we're not able to do because of structural issues in Washington. And she was so fully supportive of all of these efforts. And plus, she just liked to get out of Washington to meet people and see what was going on in their districts and in their cities. Voracious curiosity with respect to what other folks were doing and how she could support them. She very much in the same way that Representative Conyers kind of viewed themselves as a member writ large, and that they felt that it was important not only to pay attention to issues that were going on in their districts, but to be able to actually use the bully pulpit of being a member of Congress to support other groups, other localities in making progress. She was one of a kind, absolutely one of a kind. The best friend you could have and the most formidable adversary you could ever imagine. Even her Republican colleagues got misty-eyed when they talked about what she meant to them and what she meant to this institution. She made a lasting impact, and her presence will be felt, or the loss of her presence directly will be felt on policy in the institution for years to come. And she has definitely ascended into being a legend of the House of Representatives. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the time to remember her with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you for your leadership and your partnership. And I'm not at all surprised. We reached out to our sis, Erica Alexander. We know she's busy on set somewhere, and she wasn't sure she could come, but I'm not surprised to see her make a way to get here to lift up the Congresswoman. Erica, thank you for being here. Our condolences to you. If you could please share.
Thank you for the invitation. And Mr. Keenan Keller, we worked together. The reason why the Reparations documentary that we were able to make with you, Robin and Sheila Jackson Lee, is because of Keenan Keller. And he allowed us to get into the backstage of Congress. It's rarely done. He made it happen. And he also gave us access and advice and guidance to how to do it for a very long time. He's not only an advocate of Black and brown people and of the American people, but of narrative story change and really trying to make things accessible, not just for people who might have all of the, I don't know, the credentials, but us who are just starting to do this thing. So thank you for believing in this. I love Keenan. He's genius, and we got to interview him too. So thank you. I just want to say thank you for this time. You know that if anyone knows me, obviously I'm connected to the Congresswoman by the Reparations documentary, The Big Payback, but also because I campaigned with her in 2007 and 2008. And that's where I first met her. I was one of the lead surrogates for Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton's campaigns were surrounded by amazingly powerful Black women. And Sheila Jackson Lee was one of them. And we went all around the country, and she taught me how to not only to campaign, but how to advocate for myself through the campaign. How to speak for myself through Hillary was one thing, but how to also talk about my life inside of it and see myself as being a conduit to other people her training was essential. We remained friends. And not only did I get to remain friends with her and the great John Lewis, but I got taught by Iyanla Van Zandt and Maya Angelou and all those people. They were there. Sheila Jackson Lee and I remained friends the longest. She became a mentor to me. She's also a girlfriend. We laughed about things. She mentioned things she had never told anybody. And I was grateful for that type of conversation and confidence. But I just want to say, I miss her. I will always miss her. I miss her strength and her fortitude, but I'll miss her vulnerability because I knew she fought that hard because of the delicate places in her. And we see these strong people, Black men and women pushing forward. We don't often see how fragile they are, how they need love and kindness, and maybe those hard edges that we see that make their way, that sculpt their life, have been born out of tragedy and hurt and loss and disappointment. So I will miss that example of Texas fortitude. And every time I celebrate Juneteenth, I think about Sheila Jackson Lee every time. And I'll always love everybody here because that's how I met you, is through her work and of course Robin's work, and Cam, all of you, Mr. Keenan, all of you, thank you so much, and Kichi, all of you. Yeah, here I am in Canada, sitting up here fighting aliens, and you know, fighting aliens for Apple TV invasion. And I look on my phone and I see that she's gone, and the whole world dropped out of off from underneath my feet. Yep. And I realized how make-believe is nothing like real life. And her life was so amazing, it felt like make-believe. That's the truth. So thank you so much. And thank you, Robin, for asking me here. I appreciate it. I jump off, it's only because my mom came up and flew up today to see me. And I want to make sure I see her, but I thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. We love you. To Erica's point about like her life was make-believe, learn about the Congresswoman. I mean, she was a council member, she was a judge, you know, one of the first to do some things at Yale, just incredible. I've been learning so much over this.
Her father was a comic book artist, one of the first Black men in comics.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And next, if we could have signed up, we have, or committed, we have Cam, Jamoke, Sister Nikichi. If you could unmute yourself. Michael Blake was coming in. If you all in that order could be prepared to give remarks, and then we're gonna leave a minute for anyone else that would like to share.
So thank you, Robin. And I want to thank Keenan for the words he shared, and Erica, and your words as well, Robin. Most people here know that I'm a Black nationalist. And as a Black nationalist, it's incredibly difficult or different for me to call someone of another government my leader. And so Sheila Jackson Lee, I refer to her all the time as my leader, not the leader, but my leader. I loved her with extraordinary love because she had extraordinary love for us and this issue of reparations. In 2018, Congressman Conyers was forced to leave the Congress. And at the time, I was the Legislative Commission chair of NCOBRA and had been working with Congressman Conyers for about 10 years prior. And we were looking for someone to replace him who could fill the congressman's shoes. And so we had what we call the Quad Congress approach. We wanted to get one leader from each of the Quad Congresses, the Hispanic Congress, the Black Congress, the Progressive Congress, and the Asian Congress. And collectively, we thought the four of them could probably fill Congressman Conyers' shoes. But then we found out that Congressman Conyers handpicked Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And we had been meeting for several months, HR 40 Strategy Group, when we got the news. And she came onto the meeting, first meeting. And we knew from that first meeting that she was the one. She subsequently finished out that term as the lead sponsor of HR 40 and introduced it herself in 2019. And in 2019, in June of 2019, she held the first hearing since 2003 on HR 40. Tremendous leadership, just came out the door. We need a hearing, a national hearing on reparations. There hadn't been one again since 2003. And you all may remember Ta-Nehisi Coates and Dr. Julianne Malveaux and others were on that very historical hearing. And we finished that particular Congress with 177 Congress co-sponsors. Never had we got over 55, I believe, in the previous 25 plus 20, almost 30 plus years of its existence. And because of her leadership, we were able to move not only the Black Caucus members, but like I said, many members in the Quiet Caucus to sign on to the legislation. That Congress ended without us being able to get a reparations vote in the House. But we did something extraordinary according to the next Congress. Under my leadership with NCOBA, we got 112 co-sponsors for her, what's called an original co-sponsors, someone who signs on to the bill the first day it's introduced. And she took that list of 112 co-sponsors and waved it on the Congress floor and gave one of the most brilliant speeches I've ever heard on reparations, not only from a legislator, but from anyone. Where she was armed with 112 co-sponsors on the first day of the 117th Congress. If anyone get a chance, and if I'd had time, I would try to find that speech and share it. But if anybody get a chance, look for that 117th Congress, first day of Congress, speech by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee as she introduced that legislation. A month after she introduced that legislation, she had a second hearing on HR 40. And I was chosen. I was thankful that she chose me as one of the speakers for that particular hearing. It was during COVID, so it was virtual. And then just 2 months after that, she led the bill to the Judiciary Committee floor for a full markup on the bill. And for the first time in its 30-plus year history, at that time, it was voted out of committee and was ready to be sent to the floor. And the only reason it didn't go to the floor is because the leadership didn't take it to the floor. She did everything to get that bill to the floor for a vote and get it passed out the House. And then we pivoted, and she gave us two, and I shared this earlier, she gave us two national strategies for HR 40. The first strategy she gave us was Why We Can't Wait, named after Dr. King's book. And we had a very strong advocacy campaign around Why We Can't Wait. We had over 300 organizations sign a Why We Can't Wait letter. And subsequently now there's a Why We Can't Wait group that came out of that. She also led with the campaign called It's Good for All of America. And that's the campaign we were working on now as we were pivoting toward the commission by executive order. At the time of her passing, the time she announced that she was sick, she was still working on getting us a visit with the White House, getting us a visit with Biden. At his last State of the Union address, she pulled him to the side, well, as he walked past her, because she positioned herself to speak with every president coming out the State of the Union address. She raised the issue of reparations, and he told her, his staff, to get with her, and they subsequently had some talks. So she is working on this issue up to the time that she passed. We don't know who can fulfill her shoes. I am so saddened by her loss, and I was really devastated by it. And still, it really hasn't hit me to the full extent, but certainly we miss her, we love her, and we had no greater champion on this issue, I think, since the Reconstruction era.
Thank you, Cam. Jamoke and Nkechi, we're really short on time. If you two could have remarks, and I would love to leave time for just a couple other local leaders.
Yes, good afternoon, family. So much has been said already. I don't really have a lot of stories or anything to share about Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, just remembering the fact that, over the years, as Cam said, seeing us struggle to fight to get up to 40 to 60, I think at the most, Congress people to co-sign. And then when she took the helm of HR 40, and she just took it to a whole nother level, getting us up to 217, and it's stuff that Cam said as well, getting it out of committee and to the floor. I just really wanted to take the time just to say thank you for her work, and just to acknowledge that we will be doing a show in her honor on the Reparations Now podcast on this coming Sunday, July 28th at 5:30 p.m. And the guests will be Cam Howard and our dear Robin Ruth Simmons. And I'm gonna look for that clip. I'm looking for different clips that we'll show on that show as well. So just wanted to encourage everybody, invite everybody to tune into that show so you can learn even more about Congresswoman Sheila Jackson.
Thank you, Jamoke.
Okay, this is Nikichi. I'm going to be brief. Just two things. Thank you so very much. First of all, many people here only knew Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee from her reparations work. But let me tell you, I go back to when she was a baby Congresswoman, when she first came to Congress in 1995, excuse me, Lord have mercy, which was right after the crime bill of 1994. And we were struggling with the issue of the crack versus powder cocaine. So she worked very closely with us to try to eliminate that disparity. We work very closely with her with respect to the Tulia, Texas situation. If you don't know about that, Google Tulia, Tulia, Texas. Sheila Jackson Lee served as co-host along with Congressman John Conyers and Congressman Charlie Rangel to bring family members from Tulia, Texas to Congress to testify about the atrocities that were going on in that jurisdiction, and so many other issues, from racial profiling. I mean, you just name it. So my heart goes out to her, not just for reparation. I don't want to say just, but her career was far in abundance in addition to that. And then finally, the praise on the back of my book, Reparations on Fire, Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, everyone, Robin Ruth Simmons, Erica Alexander, Professor Justin Hansford, who are all on this call today. I just made a call almost in the middle of the night, and all of them hadn't even read the book, say, yes, I will endorse. So thank you, all of you all, and especially Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who will call you in the middle of the night, I will say that. But we all loved it. So thank you so very much for this time to make some words of tribute.
Thank you so much, Sister Nikichi. And if there are any, I don't know if Michael Blake made it on or not, but if there are a couple of others from the movement that have a minute or so that they would like to share a remark, a memory, a celebration of the Congresswoman, please unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. This is Mommy Theo Wangaza, Malcolm X Center for Self-Determination out of Greenville, South Carolina, co-founder of INCOBRA, among other organizations. And I want to hold up the Congresswoman. My first recollection of the Queen Mother was in Durban, South Africa, where she worked tirelessly with the members of the Durban 400 delegation, laying the foundation for the global reparations movement, and being sure that the issue of reparation was a part of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, which continues to be the standard for self-determination and the charge for the permanent form of the people of African descent. Thank you for the opportunity to hold her up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother. And we have Sister Octavia Coleman.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Octavia Coleman out of Georgia. And I just want to say, when I had my brief congressional run, Congresswoman Lee was pivotal in my understanding when we talk about that tenacity, when we talk about the fortitude, when we talk about the audacity. I learned from her as my adoptive mentor that if you need something done, if you want something done, if you are advocating properly for your people, then you have to do it with your chest. You have to do it wholeheartedly. And for her, I am ever and eternally grateful for that lesson. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And do we have one more?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am Willie Shaw. I am the Civic Engagement Chair. for the local branch here in Evanston of the NAACP. Our president, Michael Neighbors, is on sabbatical, but I just wanted to offer our branch support and let you know as well, last night we had a national meeting where we also lifted up the family and all of you that knew her so personally. As a person that spoke before, I have not been involved or had the opportunity to be involved with her before, but I've been a supporter of her as a Black woman who's brilliant for many, many years. And so we just want to offer our support to all of you. She's also been a friend for many, many years, a life member of the NAACP, and we're always been grateful for the work and advice and help that she has offered the association. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw, and thank you definitely for keeping the movement and her family and loved ones in prayer. And there is so much that we could all say, but we are going to continue honoring her by doing our work in the reparations movement. And we have a presentation. We have the great Dr. Amilcar Shabazz. And I'm going to ask that my colleagues put his bio in the chat because we'd be here until the end of the business day going over all of his accomplishments and accolades and leadership roles and all that he's done for the movement and the whole African diaspora. But he is here today. Our initial request was that he presents on what to the slave is the 4th of July. I don't know if he's made a pivot. He has all the authority to make a pivot if he has. But that is what we are here today. We weren't able to get together on Frederick Douglass Day or Independence Day, but we do welcome you and thank you, Dr. Shabazz, for all of your leadership over the years, serving generations of emerging leaders in Black studies. Thank you.
Asante Sana, thank you for those kind words. Thank you everyone for participation in this reparations strategy session. I will take just a moment before sharing screen and shifting over to bring a few marks on the great loss of our beloved sister, Sheila Jackson Lee. Some of you know here, I am a Texan. I was born in occupied Mexico in Texas, and not far from Houston. I wasn't in the district she was in, but let me tell you, that seat, Texas 18th district, is a very important, very historic seat. It is the only district that with a real Black majority that has elected Black leadership since Reconstruction. I mean, since in history. Actually second person in that seat, you would know as the great Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan was succeeded by a very brilliant Pan-Africanist brother, Mickey Leland. That's when I was coming into politics, political awareness. Mickey Leland, he died in a plane crash and was succeeded by a guy named Craig Washington. A little more on the Uncle Tom variety, I mean, in terms of his performance, but Craig Washington was in there, and we in the community said, okay, it's time to move this fool out. We need somebody serious. And that's when I had to, I didn't know her really that well at that time, but I checked in with a sister who was part of raising me, my political consciousness in Austin, Texas, when I was an undergrad, a sister who was a welfare rights activist and community activist named Velma Roberts. Velma had worked with her in Austin when she was with the Railroad Commission. And Velma said, no, Shabazz, she's the real deal. And so, as you know, Brother Cam was saying, we don't really look to these people that are all caught up in the United States government system of politics as really like our leaders, because usually to be in that, you kind of sell out. But so I had to really check in, and Velma told me, because she knew my political leanings, and she says, no, Shabazz, you need to check her out, because they had a lot of deep discussions, and again, this is before she's on a national scene, on a political scene, and he said, this sister has got it. She's got consciousness. She's going to do some great things for us. So when we were looking to get Craig Washington out, we then landed on Sheila Jackson Lee. She stepped up and she replaced him. We knocked him out the box like she had 70% of the vote. I mean, he was just totally discredited, and we sent her in with resounding support, beat the incumbent now. And she has held that seat ever since. Very important seat. And so, when she took the reins of HR 40, I was not surprised. I was elated, and it's been great to work with her all through these past 30, almost 40 years that I've known and worked with Sheila Jackson Lee, the great Sheila Jackson Lee, now with the ancestors. So definitely, it is a blow. It is a loss. A library has burned, but from the ancestral realm, may she continue to guide us and bless us in all the work that we do. So I'm going to move over and share screen now to get into this remarks to hopefully generate some conversation for this strategy session. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Learning from Frederick Douglass. I preface this with a little epigraph, a little quote from my beloved brother, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, who once said, if you don't tell it like it was, it can never be as it ought to be. And I think that deals with an African conception of time. Time past, time present, time future is all one. Uhuru Sasa. Freedom now. Time is relative. It's all one. The past flows into the present. The present is the terrain from which we create the future. And so with that, if we're going to ever make things the way it ought to be, we've got to tell it like it was. So with that, I want to address one of the areas that reparations doesn't talk about as much. We talk about the wealth gap. We talk about the health gap. We talk about the criminal justice, crime and punishment gap. We talk about all these other kinds of gaps, but we seldom talk about that fifth and important one, the dignity gap. How do we close that gap? Well, I want to raise and suggest to you that this speech, this what to the slave is the 4th of July, can be a springboard for addressing the dignity gap and raising discussions in the community. Here in Massachusetts, our humanities organization, masshumanities.org, has for a number of years now supported local communities to organize what are called Reading Frederick Douglass Together events. And it doesn't have to be on July 5th. It doesn't have to be on July 4th. With now these events are all over the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, and they take place all throughout the month of July. Some start days before the 4th, might start as early as July 1. Some are still going on now, and here we are toward the end of July. So all over the month, communities can organize these events. They can apply to Mass Humanities for an RFDT grant, Reading Frederick Douglass Together grant. And what it essentially consists of is folks coming together to collectively read the actual speech that Douglass gave there in the 1850s when he was invited to a 4th of July celebration. And everybody was, having the big festivities, and they invite him because he was a prominent speaker, and he just went there and blew them away to say, hey, what is this business? Y'all inviting me here to celebrate freedom. And don't you realize I am part of a people who are still enslaved in this very country? That your freedom and your independence and all this that you celebrate, we are still denied by this very country. And so we take that speech from and we chop it up into little paragraphs or portions, and each person comes to the podium, comes to the mic, reads their portion, and it goes on to the next person. It goes on to the next person until we read pretty much the whole speech or some redacted kind of version of the speech. And it's very powerful. I'll just give you a flavor as it starts out. This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This to you is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance, and to the signs and to the wonders associated with that act and that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life, and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though a good old age for a man, is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. And he goes on, but then he shifts gears on it, and he starts talking about how I'll just cut to that part of it. He says, fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men too, great enough to give fame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. And so again, he's still kind of building up, talking about how these founding fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honors. They were men of peace. They were this, they were that. You start to think, well, gosh, he's blowing America up so big. But then he comes back around and he eventually says this: fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? What have I, or the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and confess to the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. And so it goes from there, and the even goes into, for those with any knowledge of like Rastafari, and even talking about by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. And he goes on. It's a brilliant, beautiful, powerful speech. It definitely registers within the appreciation of the humanities in terms of the power of oratory, and the ways in which he connects history with the present, engages the past with the present. It's a brilliant piece of human letters and expression. And so it's certainly appropriate for the National Endowment for the Humanities to have events that to support these kinds of programs, and local, state, and state humanities foundations supporting these programs. And I do for those of you in states who may not have these kinds of celebrations going on. Use the model of mass humanities. Cite this in your state as for support from your local humanities organization, and begin to think about developing for next July a Reading Frederick Douglass together. In our most recent events, and we've been doing these here in the area for a long time now. I've been in Massachusetts since 2007. I was very early called upon when I got here to Springfield, Massachusetts, where they would do it on the steps of City Hall. And I later worked with folks to make it happen here in Amherst. And it's been going on pretty much every year. We've done them outdoors through 1 year, and we do them indoors. As this past July 5th, 2024, we actually moved indoors for certain weather issues, and the place was packed. There was all kinds of support. We engage, always ask, and if you get the toolkit look at the toolkit from Mass Humanities, they give you help on the media press kit. They help you with how to organize, how to write up your budget, to support it, telling you about talking to your local state representatives and state senators and get them involved. We had such representation at our event most recently in Amherst. Our state senator came out and read a portion of the speech with us. Other local political leaders are there. And so after you finish the whole reading, then in our case, and oftentimes you have a discussion. You have a little, you can go and break out into smaller groups and come back as a big group. Depending on the size of your group, you can just go into one big discussion circle. And as such, then I was asked to develop the questions for the prompt around it. And what did I do? I developed it around reparations. How does the speech speak to our struggle for reparations today? And so right there at this event of about 200 people, we break them up into small groups. Everybody's talking about it. Of course, here in Amherst, we followed Evanston in developing a municipal plan for reparations, creating funding for it, and moving soon and very soon, I hope, to actually begin distributing some funds, but for reparative justice initiatives in our town. But we then use this through the discussion period to directly raise questions about reparative justice work, what things we need to do, how must we build this in the community, how must we support this at the state level, in terms of the state initiative we have here. Sister Kathleen Anderson, I believe, is in the audience and has been working very, very hard on the state level, state government level, and then also on the national government level. How do we bring this up in the campaign for the presidency and for taking the House and trying to hold on to the Senate? How does reparations work in all those arenas? And so we use it for discussion, and again, keeping it, tapping people's viewpoint, tapping people's energies to keep the work going here. And so some of the things around why this reading is so important to do these kinds of events is that Douglass's story in U.S. history and in the world is a very powerful one. You know, we have all these questions: who should be eligible for reparations? Well, in the life of Douglass, it's point blank right there. You know, you can see it in his life. You have someone who in his narrative and tells the story all the way from his childhood, what slavery was like, how it impacted his whole experience, his separation from his mother, his never knowing his father, because his father was an overseer, was part of the slavery system, oppressing him and keeping him down, and had no interest in him at all, wouldn't allow him to use his surname for his name, even if he would have wanted to use it. But also in Douglass, you understand how the struggle for freedom is not an event, but is a process. is an ongoing struggle. You also learn about the history, about how the period of his life there in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and so on, was all part of this reform age, and how abolitionism became the leading edge of the struggle for reform. You can learn a lot about Civil War and Reconstruction, 19th century US culture, social justice in a global context, the intersections with women liberation, and completely exploding stereotypes. When I was in elementary school and first learned of Douglass, this is back in the 60s, back in a situation of absolute 100% racial segregation. There were no white people in my elementary school and most of my middle school years, no white people in the building at all, unless the superintendent or somebody from the power structure would come to visit or see something, which was very rare. We had no presence of white people in my elementary school at all. And in middle school, they did attempt to start some integration. We had some white teachers. They would give us some of the rookies, the untested. They tell them, if you want a job here, here's where you go. And they'd stick them out there with us and take the best, try to take some of the best teachers away out of our school to put them over in the white schools. So but we had brave, creative, strong, educated teachers who put the history in, even though it wasn't part of any official curriculum, even though it was like they're trying to do it again today in Texas and in other states under the banner of banning critical race theory, they would still slip it in. And so we would learn about Douglass in Black History Month, which of course is why Black History Month is in February, because that's the date that we understand Frederick Douglass was born. And one of the main quotes I most remember from him coming up in my early years was this quote: "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Freedom is not an event. Freedom is not something that happened on Juneteenth or happened on the 4th of July or happened on any single day. Freedom is an ever constant struggle that requires constant soldiers in continuous struggle." At the events as well, we give copies of the narrative of Frederick Douglass out. There's some very inexpensive editions that one can buy, and we hand these out to people that they can read, learn more about his life. Of course, his first one was published in 1945. And you got to remember, this brother escapes with the help of a woman who becomes his wife. He escapes at 20 years old, and he gets up to New York and is helped by a brother that we recognize here in Northampton, which also now has Reparations Commission and is working toward a plan in Northampton, Massachusetts, just over the Connecticut River from Amherst. That's where the great David Ruggles is going to move to. But Ruggles was in New York. This is David Ruggles, who opens the first Black bookstore in New York, which becomes kind of his little Underground Railroad place. If you could make it to New York, the word was for Douglass, find Ruggles. And when he finds David Ruggles says, "Oh, dude, okay, we're going to help you. But look, you can't stay in New York. It's not safe. It's not safe." So where does he move him out to? Massachusetts. He comes out here to New Bedford, Massachusetts. He's helped with people and works with people in Springfield, Massachusetts, and we're working on reparations in Springfield, by the way. He's helped by David Ruggles, who then later moves to Northampton, or what they call Florence, in a utopian community that exists there that's anti-slavery. So he's safe there, but it's still not so safe even here in Massachusetts. And so he ultimately has to bounce. And of course, when his narrative comes out, that just put the price on his head through the roof. Like this $2 million for Sister Assata Shakur, it was like that for Fred Douglass once his narrative came out. So he had to get out of the country. He goes over to Ireland and the UK. And while he's over there, amazing people with his oratory, with his firsthand testimony about slavery and talking to people. They are going to raise the money, dig this, to give reparations to his former owner, to pay his former owner, so that they will stop the bounty hunters. They'll stop the people, slave catchers, from trying to catch him. They will pay off his owner, and that's what allows him to leave Europe and to come back to the United States in the late 1840s. And so again, there's so much. I want to just finally leave with this and leave time for discussion with this. In the book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century by William A. Darity Jr. and Kirsten Mullen, if you look at the index, there are two men who are most cited throughout the book. The most cited throughout the book is Frederick Douglass. The second is the flip side in terms of the anti-Black racism, white supremacy, and that is Andrew Johnson, the person who comes to power after Lincoln is assassinated, who is effectively the president that stifled us from moving in the direction of 40 acres and a mule and true reparations. This guy has to be covered a lot to understand why reparations didn't happen when it first should have happened. But the other person is Douglass, and Darity, points out some good quotes from Douglass. Douglass appears on page 1 of the book in terms of an opening quote where it goes that the world has never seen, this is Douglass, the world has never seen any people turned loose to such destitution as were the 4 million slaves of the South. They were free without roofs to cover them, or bread to eat, or land to cultivate, and as a consequence, died in such numbers as to awaken the hope of their enemies that they would soon disappear. That's Frederick Douglass from Celebrating the Past, Anticipating the Future, 1875. Finally, this is one other quote from him where he writes, "The USA has robbed us of the rewards of his labor, has robbed the New African of the rewards of his labor during more than 200 years. If land were given to Blacks as promised during the Civil War, the New African would not today be on his knees as he is, supplicating the old master class to give him leave to toil." I want to stop there and unshare my screen and allow some time for some Q&A, discussion, what have you. I'm not finding the place to unshare, so if any co-host, oh, here it is, stop share. So with that, I stop and just pause and open for discussion.
I just have one quick question. Do you, in your presentations, use just the narratives of Frederick Douglass, or there was a recent book a few years ago, Frederick Douglass, I think it was called Prophet of Freedom by David Blight. You using that at all? He is a white male. It was an excellent book, I thought, but I don't know if it was just for commercial purposes or how involved he might be in the movement, but he was a proponent of Douglass and a supporter of his work and all of that. So I just wondered if you use Blight's book at all.
So I actually am working on a piece on Douglass and reparations, because as I'm saying here, Darity references him quite a bit, but I think that Douglass is not the real most most solid example of the reparations activist from the 19th century. He did push for land. He did hope there would be some land redistribution, but he kind of left the battlefield, so to speak, for reparations. And I think we need to understand why and how, in all fairness. And David Blight is a very good source on this. If in the slide presentation I had, I go on to talk from one of Blight's works about how African-American forms of memory are very important to understand. And he lays out a good framework on that. He has a good book himself on Douglass that I use a lot in the piece that I'm writing. But for the reading Frederick Douglass together, no, we only use that speech from 1852, whatever it is, that and broken up into little paragraphs, because it's very neat. It flows really well. It's great oratory, great, easy to read. We have young people. We had children at 12 years old getting up there to read their paragraph. So, they can get it beforehand if you divide it up and have somebody coordinating the sections properly. So no, we limit ourselves to that, but for purposes of discussion and for purposes of connecting Douglass, yes, there is a lot of great readings, other readings, both by Douglass and about Douglass, that we can certainly bring to bear in appreciating his importance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Dr. Shabazz?
Please, Dr. Shabazz, this is Sheila from the National Youth and Young Adult Coaches. And sorry, I'll speak up. I'm the National Youth and Young Adult Co-Chair for Info. And my name is Sister Liliax, and I just wanted to say thank you for this information. It's very important to get the quotes and just the history, because I'm actually working on my master's, and my master's thesis is around the need for reparations. And a key issue that I keep running into with my, I'll just call them professors, is that they say there's no evidence or no proof, and they, often push me and ask me, well, where is the proof? How can you prove this? And a lot of the information you had today, I'm actually literally like typing notes to get ready to go back and work on one of my final papers with the information you just shared with me, because this is the proof. And the way that you framed it was extremely helpful to build on as I'm continuing my master's thesis around this topic. But I just wanted to say thank you so much. And if there is an email or a way for me to get in contact with you further, because I do also have to, part of my program, I have to do expert interviews to support my case. And so I would love to continue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If someone can put in the chat, Shabazz at umass.edu. Shabazz at umass.edu. Please share that with you. Be glad to work with you, help you in any way. And let me just take this as an opportunity to say, one of the people that my great mentor, friend, comrade taught me about, I'm speaking of Brother Imari Obadeli, is that if you want a 19th century figure who really represented the struggle for reparations, check out a brother named Tunis Campbell.
Yep, Tunis Campbell.
That's who Imari Obadeli opened my mind, blew my mind with, to understand. This is before Callie House. This is before Marcus Garvey, before Malcolm X, before Queen Mother Moore, before all of these people. You go back in your historical studies to Tunis Campbell. They organized for land, for independence, and they organized a political, administrative, military apparatus to defend. And this is so clear cut. Is the example of Tunis Campbell. So we're going to be working on bringing him more to the forefront as well.
Awesome, thank you. And we have
Thank you. And we have
double down on tuna.
on.
I'm not sure what that echo is, but we have one final remark, and then we're actually going to just have a couple closing remarks from Jim Oke.
Yes, I just wanted to add, as not, I don't know, it is related, I guess, to reparations, but I just wanted to, I always think it's important one of the stories that I like about Frederick Douglass is the fact that, when he ran away and the person that helped him to house him while he ran away, and he was getting ready to go back to the plantation, he said, I can't go back because, they'll beat me to death. And he was given a spiritual charm that he was told that once you have this on your person, you won't be beat again. And he went back and he wasn't beat, or even ever since that point as well. So I just wanted to add that story. I think it's important. There's a lot of spiritual stories that are connected to our history that not often brought out. Just wanted to bring that out.
Thank you, Jim Oke. And I did see that Cass had her, Cass, if you could unmute yourself. Did you have a comment?
Yes, hi, I'm sorry. I'm in a car in the storm and I can no longer hear anyone, but I wanted to offer assistance for the young lady that's writing her thesis. I recently went on a tour of Staggville Plantation. The descendants of Staggville Plantation in Durham, North Carolina, actually had 900 of their family members that were slave members on that plantation. And they actively are responsible for doing the tours and leading the contributions of what their family members have provided. And they have done geological studies underneath the plantation. So there is someone on hand for you to talk to about the findings of their research. And it is a family that is alive and well, that meet often about their 900 descendants, not only that ran that 30,000 acre plantation, but also extended into 2 different states to build 2 other plantations. So when you're looking for proof, they have that proof for you at that plantation. So I hope that's helpful as well.
Thank you so much.
That's in Durham, North Carolina, Staggville Plantation.
Mr. Kaz, if I could join, I see a name in the screen of Jeffrey Trask, and that last name Trask, T-R-A-S-K, brings to mind one of the founders of our local little private liberal arts college called Amherst College. Amherst College, first founding board of trustee member was named Israel Trask. And Israel Trask, as well as the whole family, they were one of the big donors helping to financially support and create Amherst College and sustain Amherst College. Where was part of their wealth from? It was from plantations in Alabama, in the Deep South. Cotton plantations that was part of the wealth they enjoyed from stolen wealth, stolen labor, forced labor of Black folks, African people in the South to support that. And to its credit, Amherst College today has a study group with support of the administration that is researching all of this, putting it together, looking at the role Amherst College has played in the support of slavery. And so it's very important how this reparative justice work is giving life, is generating all kinds of research, of scholarship, and of transformation. One of the descendants of that Trask plantation, they are out there, they are organized, and they are in discussion with Amherst College about how reparations can be enacted within that institution itself. So again, this is the power of this reparative justice work. Thank you.
Awesome. Dr. Shabazz, we can never thank you enough for your ongoing leadership, I recommend everybody find him on Facebook because he is a library of knowledge, resharing reparations news, updates, education. Find him on Facebook. If you want to shout out if it's your name. I know you have a couple different groups also, it looks like, that you manage. So should they just follow you and then they'll get access to the other groups? Is that the best way? Okay, perfect. Find him, stay informed. I was invited to be the Grand Marshal for the 4th of July parade in my city, Evanston. And so it had this topic on my mind. And after a lecture on what to the slave is the 4th of July and all things Frederick Douglass, I accepted in the spirit of Frederick Douglass, and my city knew that. But it's important that we lift up this message. Also, we saw that Karen Hughes has put in the chat some details, some programming on genealogy that's happening with the Reparations Generation Advisory Board, or the Reparations Generation Organization. In that note, please make sure that you are engaged with your regional strategy sessions. That information has been put in the chat, and there we get into more detail. We are able to learn more about your specific initiative and action plan and strategize around it. Thank you all for coming in the spirit and in the excellence and with the rigor of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Let's continue our fight onward for reparations, peace, awe, and love.
Free the land, reparations on fire.
That's right.
Woohoo!
That's
All right now.
Right.
Love you all. Peace and
Love you
blessings.
all.
Love you.
Safe travels.
Peace and blessings.